to Red Barrels episode 10. It's double digits. We did it. We did it, everyone.
Whee!
10 more of these, and we have 100 episodes. 10 more of those, and we have 1,000 episodes. It's all coming along. Everything's going great. But before we start, quick apologies for missing an episode last time. Unfortunately, one of our number was ill, deeply taken with the lurgy. The deep state, maybe they got. I'm going to say them. I'm going to keep it a mystery as to who was ill, because I don't want to shame anyone. But that's what happened. But we're all raring to go, and especially raring to go today because we have an incredibly special guest. But before we get to the guest, got to do a bit of a drum roll, metaphorically. We're going to introduce everyone else. I'm Alex. I'm here every time. Sorry. Who's up next? Ed.
You don't sound very happy to introduce me, Alex.
Yeah. Let's just introduce the other people.
The three of us are scum. The three of us are scum. Our guest is all that matters, but we have to get through us before we get to the guest, all right?
Fair enough. Fine. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Ed. You might know me from episode 1, 2, 3, etc. of this podcast. I could go on. Sophie?
Yeah, no, it's me, Sophie. Also here since episode 1. Although, where was I in episode 4? I'm not sure.
Wow.
It's a
metaphysical question for us all. But as I said, we're all scum, dirt on the bottom of everyone's shoes, because instead we have a.
Alex, are you okay?
Look,
do you need to talk to someone?
Look. In relative terms, I think we're great. But our guest is so amazing, so deeply fantastic a person that, in relative terms, we're scum. Look, I'm bearing lead. We have Colossus YouTuber and streamer and general very nice guy. It's Tom Nicholas. Say hello, Tom.
Hello. I mean, I don't think I can live up to that now. I think it's all going to be.
I think there's no way anyone could.
Yeah.
You're doing it right now. You're living up right now.
My monosyllabic answers to anything that is mentioned will now be a deep disappointment. But thank you very much for having me.
Woo!
Episode 10. That's a special one to be in. The big.
Yeah.
The big 1-0. The big 1-0. This is the one everyone's going to remember.
I should have brought.
It's going to be
happy.
Yeah,
happy.
Yeah, it's going to be chiseled into a giant column over, the world. They're going to make a giant column that looms over the entire planet, and it's going to have this.
Do you mean like an obelisk?
Number.
Are we doing like an obelisk?
Yeah, sure.
I love a traditional obelisk,
Yeah, one of those.
Keep it classy.
Like Ed Miliband in 2015.
Not these modern obelisks. Obelisks like these days.
10-year
No, fuck these modern obelisks, okay? Only traditional obelisks, all right?
Well, as I said, we are in the presence of YouTube royalty. So before we get started, I do just want to ask Tom, what's it like at the Eyes Wide Shut style parties that all the YouTubers go to? Does like Lindsay Ellis like sit on a throne of skulls?
Oh,
is Big Joel as big a massive pervert as I just assume he is?
I don't know if they've not been inviting me. So one day.
Oh well, I'm terribly sorry to
I would raise that
pass on this.
I'll let you know. I'll come back with
set up your own parties. You're better than them.
Yeah. I mean, I think they probably live streamed or something, right? Anyway, so
yeah, good point. Well, let's go on the show proper. But before we get started with that, you know what's come. You know it's back. It's time for Who Would Mark's Main.
It is back. Okay.
Uh-oh.
No, great.
It is back.
Well
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Who Would Mark's Main? Tom, you are sadly a stranger to history's greatest podcast segment. Who Would Mark's Main? We talk about a game's roster of characters, and it's up to you to discern which one of those characters would Mark's main if he were alive today and some sort of esports player.
Mm-hmm.
of course he would be.
Today's game is Marvel Rivals.
Oh,
That's
God.
right. We're going very relevant. It's really big right now. It's hot. It's fresh. It's dethroned Overwatch. But who would Mark's main? Look at these cowards. These cowards are looking up on the internet to find out the roster of Marvel Rivals.
I only know Squirrel Girl.
Self-professed gamers cannot determine who they're talking about.
I only know Squirrel Girl, and I just don't know if Marks would play Squirrel Girl. Maybe.
You're saying Squirrel Girl? Okay.
That's the only one I know. Hold on.
Is it good? I've not played it. Is it good?
I haven't played it either.
I've heard it's good. I've heard people like it.
I think, as far as I'm concerned, it just sounds like an Overwatch clone, and I think Overwatch was good in a very specific period of time, and after that, not really.
I still think of Overwatch as being a
Mm.
TF2 clone, so I'm on a whole extra level separated from it.
Oh,
Well, exactly. No,
wow.
exactly.
True purist, true purist.
I was never very
Well, I
good
think
at it.
Team Fortress 2 seemed like a Team Fortress 1 on the original Quake engine clone.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
all right. Jeff the Land Shark. That's who I think Marks would main.
Jeff the
I'm quite drawn.
Landshark.
I have not come across Jeff the Landshark in any Marvel context.
That's what
before.
I'm saying. I don't know
is
what
this-
property he's from, and I think maybe that makes him the most anti-Marvel property in that I don't recognize him from any other franchise, and I think Marks would be against the Marvel universe. I think he would be upset by the extended Marvel universe. So I'm going to say Jeff the Landshark because I think he's the most unrecognizable character from the entire franchise. And I think
Anyone
Marks is a
else?
hipster down when it comes down to it, you know.
It's true. It's true. It's very true. Ed, you're looking pensive. You've got one ready to go.
Well, having studied the annals of myth and culture, I can definitively say Marx would main Loki.
Loki.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Yes. So as you know, Loki is a
What?
mythological archetype of the trickster, a being who lives on the edge of society, disrupting social norms, challenging authority.
Wow.
He's a bit like a Robin Hood
Wow.
figure.
Big lord
So-
dump right here.
So he clearly would be Mark's number one choice. Look, if your choice isn't Loki, then you aren't okay. Then you aren't okay.
Wow. Wow.
If it ain't Loki, it ain't Oki.
If it ain't Loki,
Okay.
you ain't woke.
All right.
It ain't Woki if it ain't Loki. That's good.
Tom, we want to hear your Marxist
God, I
theory
was
at
taking it
work
far too
here.
seriously. I'm going for Spider-Man. I think
Spider-Man.
the sort of working class lad from
Pretty working
Queens,
class, yeah.
Mm.
working hard to make ends meet in, presumably these days in a kind of gig economy job, delivering pizzas for like Deliveroo or whoever's taken over, because I'm sure the pizza place, doesn't employ its own staff anymore because, Just Eat or DoorDash or whatever they've got in New York has sort of taken over. And so it's really kind of piecemeal work these days. And so I think he'd really challenge that. Red costume
Mhm.
Yeah, very true.
That's true.
and strong arms.
Strong arms.
And he's always...
You two really need to buck things up. That's a real class-based analysis, right?
Like,
there. Come on.
Capital Volume 3 is mostly him talking about how strong his arms are.
You need the strong arms to be able to
Mm.
carry
People-
the volumes of capital.
People just don't get that far, and so they miss out that it's like, by the time he gets number 3, he's like, oh yeah,
Mm.
and I'm sat here right in with my really strong arms.
Also,
Well,
Spider-Man.
well.
Yep.
that was easily the best rationale we've had so far for one of these.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, I'm afraid even with that, all three of you are wrong. The correct answer is Moon Knight. Yes, if you a close reading of Capital and some of the work, some of the letters with Engels, that'll show you it's definitely Moon Knight. Moving on, I said it already before we get started. I think twice already. But before we get started again, we do have something to announce, which is that keen listeners may know that many of us, all of us to some degree or the other, have been involved in the gaming festival Games Transformed, and it's happening again. That's right, Games Transformed is back. They have officially launched their 2025 event, and it will be happening on July the 11th and 12th. That's right, it's 2 days now.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's got bigger and better than ever before with 2 days. The first day
There's
is
no
kind of
break,
more
just straight through.
No
for
breaks,
48
just straight
hours.
through.
100%.
48-hour festival.
100%.
Camp.
The real,
You know,
the
bring a
real
tent.
game is surviving the event.
Just to be clear, that's not true. If you try to stay late or overnight in the facilities, you will be removed. But in every other way, we are very happy to have you there. You don't have to come for both days. July the 11th is a Friday, so you may want to come for the Saturday on the 12th. But we'd love to have you on either day. The first day is going to be more academic based. Second day is going to be everything else, kind of free for all. But it's going to be great. There's going to be talks. There's going to be discussions. There's going to be, most importantly, games you can actually play. There's going to be board games. There's going to be video games. all sorts of a bunch of like computers set up that you can play on. And also we're going to have big names. We're going to have People Make Games, Chris Bratt and Quins. They're going to be there. Relevant coming up, Gareth Damian Martin, who produced Citizen Sleeper. That's a bit of a clue for the game we're going to be talking about, in that it is that game. But also Citizen Sleeper 2 is going to be there to talk about the sequel, Citizen Sleeper 2.
That was such an effort to do like a teaser and then just being that.
It is that.
I just thought like maybe it's a bit too vague. I thought let's just
You don't trust
our
our
own head,
audience.
you know?
You thought this is foreshadowing. We're going to have the guy from Citizen Sleeper for the podcast. Was not quite obvious.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing is a literary device.
But
Yeah, go.
they're going to be there. But and most importantly, history's greatest podcast guest, Mr. Tom Nicholas, right here, is also going to be there. That's right. It's going to be a
I am
cavalcade of
indeed.
stars. And
In the-
genuinely, well, let's hear it from Tom.
In the announcement video that Chris did, it's like, we've got like games designers, we've got like journalists, and then like some other people we might invite. And I was like, that's me. I'm just sort of like
Yay!
hanging around.
You are other.
Yeah.
Other.
I'm and many more ...
You're that first dot in my heart, Tom.
After today's podcast, no one will doubt your gamer cred. It's going to be tattooed on your forehead. Everyone's going to know, even the people you'd probably rather not know. They're all going to
mention the tattooing
what gamer
aspect of
you
this
are.
podcast, didn't we, Tom?
Yeah. That's coming up
Amazing.
next.
I'll keep an ear out for the door.
Yeah.
But yeah, Games Transformed, it's going to be a great time. I'm going to be there. Don't let that put you off. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. So we recommend that, and we heartily endorse it. And I'm sure we will be talking and plugging more as we get up to mid-July. And maybe we'll have some more guests from people involved in that. Maybe. Who knows? I haven't actually asked anyone, but I'm just saying it's possible. But yeah, now, before we get to... No. Now we are going to get started. We are going to get started. We are literally done. It's time to talk about the game. So we're having a bit of a change in format today because we've got a special guest and there's 4 of us. Instead of each talking about our own game, we've all played one game and we're all going to talk about it and what we think about it. And as you may have gleaned from some previous clues, the game we are talking about will be...
Our most attentive
Yeah,
listeners
yeah.
may have picked up on some subtle hints.
Might have
Right.
caught it.
Squeezed it out of the subtext that I've been dropping along the way. Sorry, it's going to be Citizen Sleeper.
Oh,
Released
Glad if you
by
got that. Well done.
Jump Over the Age, which Jump Over the Age is essentially Gareth Damian Martin, who we mentioned earlier, who is the developer of that game. And yeah, we've all played it, and I'm sure we have thoughts. We don't know those thoughts yet. We haven't discussed it because that's what the podcast is for. But I've played it. Why don't we start off just saying kind of how far we got into it? We haven't had as much time to play it. I will say that I completed pretty much everything except the DLC chapters. I only got one of them down, and that's kind of where I had to draw the line, unfortunately. Though they look good from what I saw. Ed, what about you? How far did you get into it?
I've done one full playthrough of the game and got one ending. So I don't know what percentage of the game I've seen exactly, but I played for about 7 hours and got the credits to roll.
What about you, Sophie?
I wasn't able to get as far as I wanted. I had a migraine on Monday, which meant I couldn't look at any screens. so
I'm sorry.
so I wanted to play the game on Monday, but I couldn't. But I've basically gotten up to, I think probably, I don't think I've gotten very far, to be honest. I've explored a lot of the sort of beginnings of some of the storylines. I've unlocked the Greenway.
Yeah.
I just basically did that. So I haven't gotten very far. I was loving the vibe of it. I found the sort of structure of the game a lot to get used to for me. That sort of took a
Yeah.
bulk of my mental energy to get used to. But otherwise, I was enjoying it. Especially, I was enjoying the writing. I think it's really well written.
Yeah.
So I was enjoying how well written it was. But yeah, I didn't get as far as I wanted to. I look forward to continuing more. Tom, how about yourself?
yes, really good. It feels like they've kind of found a way to trick the gamers into reading a book.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
it's good, like because it's really well written as well.
It's well written.
like,
It feels like
there's
Disco
bits-
Elysium in that way. But go ahead.
Yeah.
There's just great bits of sort of world building and like little moments where, and just like just bits where there's just like gorgeous sentences where you're just like, oh, that's
Mm.
yeah. I think I've almost done about at least maybe 2 endings, and then I've never which I mean, maybe we'll get to this. One of the things I really like about it is the fact that I genuinely never had a sense of like what my main bit of my story was for the
Mm.
bit. So like,
Mm.
I almost got on a ship and then I didn't do that. It didn't let me on. And then I almost like did this and then, but yeah. So I've currently like averted most time pressure danger. I think there was a
Yeah.
point where I was like, there's like a, which I feel like is probably somewhere in the mid game where you're kind of like, oh, I've got this person over here I've got to be like doing this for, and I've got this person over here, I've got this
Mm.
person over here. I'm like now sort of chill to explore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Before we start, let's just do kind of like a little summary of how the game kind of sets up. I think we'll get into maybe getting a bit more spoilery later on, but just for people who haven't played the game, the way it kind of fundamentally works is you start off. Most of the game happens in text. You see a 3D representation of the space station that you're on, and there are little kind of character portraits that come out. But other than that, almost everything is in text, and also there's music as well. But you start off, you are a type of android called a sleeper, but instead of being, I don't know, a pure artificial intelligence or something, suffice to say, this is in the distant future. You are actually an emulation of a real person, although you don't know much about them. Much of their memories were deleted for you. You have escaped some kind of corporation in what essentially you lived in what seems to be essentially slavery. And now you've managed to wash up on a space station, which is a big ring. And you've just been thrown there, and you just have to kind of make your way through it and survive and find various benefits and decide how you want to live your life, pretty much. The way it fundamentally works is the places on the space station you can go to are kind of just menu points, essentially. You choose one, and then there will be likely an activity you can do of some sort. And when you start each day, you will be given a bunch of dice rolls. They're already pre-rolled, so they're like 1 through 6, and it's randomly chosen. And you can choose which ones you want to slot into that to do that activity. So if you really absolutely want to 100% it and you've got a 6, that's 100%. So you put that in. If you're less sure about it, you put a lower number. And these activities can progress bars that can imply your progress in some sort of task, or they can directly give you money or other goods and services and so on. And you're simply just meeting people, doing these tasks, and progressing the story. That's basically how the nuts and bolts of the game works. How did people kind of find the kind of basic setup of it?
No, yeah, I found it quite difficult to adapt to at first, just because I guess I was playing it on stream, and then someone in chat basically said, "Oh, is this based on a TTRPG?" I was like, "I don't. Is it based on a TTRPG? Because it feels very much like a tabletop board. It feels like a board game almost, where you're just sort of. It feels like you're moving pieces, obviously, around a board, and then relying on those cycles and those dice to obviously determine the success of certain activities. I found it quite overwhelming at first, and then it was a little bit difficult. I guess I kind of realized slowly that I was progressing into the overwhelm of the game, the initial overwhelm of the game design, into the intended overwhelm of trying to get by and having to choose between like food and medication on a daily basis. And that sort of, it was replaced by that sense of overwhelm, which was a little bit difficult to place at first. But then I realized, like, oh, I see. This is America, where I might have to choose between, like, yeah, medication or food one day. So I thought that was quite well simulated, especially in the beginning. But it did take some getting used to. And it took me a little bit, just a while to understand. I said, like, multiple times, I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing. I felt like I might have been spending time or energy on the wrong activities. I couldn't quite identify what was really important at first. But I think that's also probably by design, in that you are kind of overwhelmed. You're in this setting that you don't understand. You don't really understand how anything works because you're this sort of robot who's just awoken with no memories. So yeah, that was sort of my experience.
Tom, what about you? How did you find it?
I think I found it similar, that because there's sort of the narrative overwhelm of it as well. It's very much written in this sort of, you wake up, around you is, a crate or whatever. That's not the right word, but and you're sort of discovering things as you go, and the way in which the dialogue is written and the description is written is very much from the school of, oh, Erlin built this place, and you have to like pick up the okay, well
Mhm.
that's clearly the person that built the place, and so you have to do a lot of that, and so it does a lot of kind of not giving you pieces of information, but not giving you everything at once.
Mm.
And then as Sophie, you're just saying, like, also that bleeds into how the game works as
Mm.
well. Once I really got it, I think I really like the aspect where, so for anyone listening that's not played it, you have your like condition, which is sort of the state of your the physical kind of robot, I think, that you are, that
Yeah,
your
your health,
personality is being
essentially.
placed in. Yeah, I guess it's it's
Mm.
your sort of health that like gradually goes down, and then eventually you've got to find
Mm.
things to build it back up again. But as you go, you get fewer dice as your health gradually depletes. So you do get these interesting cycles where you get to bits where you're like, I've only got 3 dice, and then that's a bit of a it gets to be a bit of a pain for a while, and you're sort of, and
Mm.
then once you replenish and you get all 5 dice back for the next few cycles, you're kind of like, oh wow, this is okay, I can get rolling with it. But I definitely found similar, that thing of not knowing what your main, also being like, okay, I sort of want to complete this reasonably, in a reasonably timely fashion,
Mm.
and being like, oh, I actually don't know what the main part of the game for me is, and what are the sort of side quests. And I think that's because there sort of aren't. And then you get to a point where you go like, oh no, I've sort of maybe wasted some dice here because I've tried to
I
do
had that same
2
experience. Yeah.
bits, and where they just cancel each other out, and or like one clearly takes over and the other person
Mm.
leaves or something, and you just go like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. I think like I had one of those moments when I guess you're waiting for that hunter who's hunting you down, and I was like, oh shit, I forgot I'm supposed to be doing the Fangs task where I'm like doing hacky things, and I guess I just didn't see it or I didn't find it or something. I thought I just messed up. I guess he always does find you inevitably. And like I think that's also very interesting. A way of handling sort of narrative developments is that they give you a heads up of like, this person's coming back, someone's coming to find you. That's very an interesting way of kind of, it's almost like, I guess it's not quite spoilers, but it's an interesting way of doing that where it says here is a narrative beat that you must sort of be prepared to happen. Maybe you'd want to make sure you have extra money by that time, or maybe you'd want to make sure that you have extra condition or sort of you're fully healed by that time, which I thought was quite an interesting way to handle that. And it also added to some of the pressure of like, oh, I feel like I need to be prepared for this thing that's going to happen, but I don't really know what it's going to entail. Yeah.
So on the gameplay, I actually really liked how sort of stripped back and kind of raw the dice system is. Like, it means that the gameplay loop is fairly straightforward, but it's enough to facilitate the narrative. Like, it's more engaging than some games that people might derisively refer to as a walking simulator. It does feel like a proper game that like does actually engage me on a gameplay level, but clearly the narrative and the themes are what the game is like truly about. So preparing for this, I actually watched back the Games Transformed 2023 talk with Gareth.
Get that hustle on, get the plugs in.
Thank you.
Still available on YouTube,
Thank you very
baby.
much. Comment, rate, and subscribe. But yeah, so on the TTRPG thing, they actually said that it's inspired by them in general, but not a specific one. Like, there are specific bits which they've taken from them. For example, the clock system is inspired by a game called Blades in the Dark. And haven't they made a TTRPG afterwards?
Yeah, they did. It's it's between that and the sequel they made it. I don't know how it's similar and how it's different to the video game, but yeah, it's full. You get it in a box. You play it. I think it's one player. I think you play it by yourself, from what I understand.
I love how much the box appears to be the selling point for you there.
You
get it in a box.
Comes with a whole box.
For transport, for storage. It's got information on it.
Buy the left side of the box and get the right side absolutely free.
The alternative is just comes in a Tesco bag.
You won't believe
Give
how
it
many
to you.
dimensions this box it comes in. It's more than 2. I'll say that.
Whoa.
Yeah, so on the game itself, like I don't think I felt overwhelmed exactly, like apart from to the extent that the game intended me to feel a bit overwhelmed at the start. I think how it wants me to feel is uncertain of how to proceed in this sort of potentially hostile environment. I think there's the real theme of precariousness that goes through the game, although I'm sure we'll get back to a bit. But I think that's one of the major themes, and the game communicates this very effectively at the start with this kind of not quite knowing what to do feeling. And I think the other thing about this game is that like really it's not actually the hardest game in the world, but you always have this awareness of the need to prevent your physical like destabilization. Like you know you need to go and make money, or else you feel like you'll be in big trouble, even if that's not really true. And there's like an obvious way in which it's meant to sort of parallel what it's like living under capitalism in the year of our Lord 2025 or whenever this game came out. Like it feels like you basically are a member of the gig economy, and like you're renting basically, you know. So yeah, I think I had a different experience at the start of the game. I really enjoyed it from the get-go, really.
Personally, I kind of had a pretty bad experience coming into it initially. Spoiler alert, overall I did really like it. But at the beginning, and actually I tried playing this game like a couple of years ago, I think, and I bounced off it like almost immediately. And I think the main problem is that I think it doesn't communicate enough to the player about really basic stuff. For instance, at the beginning of the game, it is very difficult to work out what activities will actually give you money, like what are actual work, that you would do. And like you desperately need money at the beginning of the game. So I'm just like kind of looking at it. I can't work out, is this what I should be doing through like what I want to be doing, as in like, is this what it is? And I feel like if I was really in that situation, what jobs are actual work that pays and what are not would be fairly clear. And I think there are just a bunch of small things like this. I imagine, from my understanding, Gareth, Demi Martin was a first time developer on this. So I think there's kind of teething pains of the first go at this sort of thing. But I do think that.
I think they did one called Other Waters before this one.
Oh, really? Oh, sorry, I had a failure of my own research. I do apologize to you, the listener. But I found there were just elements where it was frustrating, and I felt like things happened that were not like narrative surprises. I think I should have reasonably known that that was going to happen. Something that does happen a bunch of times is that you complete. So as I said, some of the tasks you're doing, it fills up a bar, a circle usually actually. And when it's completed, something's happened. So for instance, maybe you're looking around an area and that's what you're spending time on. And eventually when you complete it, you now know the area and you find like, I don't know, a new character you can meet there or something. Or you're trying to form a relationship with someone and you do work for them and then the bar fills and you become friends with them or something, as an example. And sometimes like you fill that bar and you know something's gonna happen at the end. So you're like, okay, I better make sure I'm at like tip top condition and everything. I've got full health and I've got good lots of dice to go. And then you get there and it immediately starts another bar because something else there's some delay. And I'm like, oh, come on. And that like happens quite a few times. So there were just like a lot of little things like that kind of annoyed me. Anyone who listened to me talk about blueprints knows I have quite a low tolerance for kind of randomness in games, and this does have a decent chunk of it. It is literally surrounding dice as a kind of gameplay concept. So I kind of had a bit of a hard time getting into it in the first place. But I am very glad I did because, yeah, as you were saying, Sophie, the writing is really fantastic and incredibly kind of evocative of the world it is. It really, you can very easily forgive it if you're like very a visual guy. You can very easily forgive it not having much in the way of graphics because just the descriptions of the world and also combined with the music and the kind of ambient sound effects that they put on, just really gives you this feeling of being in this like colossal, sprawling kind of machine city cyberpunk world in a way that's also very kind of contemplative and you feel isolated but like connected to the people you meet. So just like phenomenal writing, and I really overall I love the game. Maybe the DLC that I haven't done will ruin it somehow, but so far I've really loved it.
Yeah, I think the writing does remind me what Tom said is I feel like is very accurate, where it does feel like it's tricking people into sort of reading a book. Because I think also very similar to Disco Elysium, it's the prose are very, very nice. I do think Disco Elysium, the prose are slightly more sort of poetic and lyrical. So these are a lot easier to pass, which is nice. I feel like Disco Elysium, like I need to sit down with a glass of wine and like really pour my entire energy into it for like 30 minutes to an hour because the writing is very dense. Obviously beautiful and well written, but very dense. Whereas I feel like the writing in this was much more practical, still very beautiful and evocative, but like it felt more practical. I think the art style as well is also beautiful. I love all the characters. I think they're really well designed, really nice, diverse cast as well, which is great. I think especially in sci-fi games, I love to see diverse cast of characters in sci-fi games in particular, because it feels like we should have moved past a lot of our sort of human trials and tribulations with discrimination. So I really like to see that level of representation and kind of very unabashed inclusion of just like, yeah, this isn't even a thing anymore, so we're not going to mention it, you know? I really enjoyed that. Something I guess I wanted to bring up, which is that like that sort of exhaustion as well, with the overwhelm in the beginning. Do you think it also serves as quite a good? Obviously, it's a metaphor for, you know, trying to work in a system that's actively against you, right? Like, you know, trying to have to prioritize, like, am I going to sleep? Am I going to work? Am I going to do whatever? Especially with limited resources, it does feel like also a pretty apt metaphor for just disability in general and injury and sickness. You know, the number of times where you, as you say, when you start the day with like 3 dice, you're like, God, what am I gonna do? Like, I don't know if I don't really have the energy to work. I definitely don't have the energy or the condition to do anything risky. I really have to do like something safe, like working at the restaurant or something. And even then after that, like, am I going to buy, medicine to restore my sort of deteriorating condition? Because in the game, the medicine is sold by sort of one person in the beginning, and it's extremely expensive. It's an amount of money that you only sort of, in the beginning of the game, end up with like once every 5 or so cycles. So that feels very dire. And then eventually, I guess the medicine it passes on to someone who sort of, it's still held on to it at the point that I'm in. It's held on to by Toshiro, but it's slightly cheaper, which is like a relief. But obviously it's this thing that keeps you alive, and the stakes of not getting it are just so high. So yeah, I enjoyed that metaphor of, obviously, like it's very relatable to people who just work, and especially people who are just sort of low wage laborers, sort of struggling to decide between putting food on the table versus, you know, other expenses that they might need or might necessitate spending on. But also just, a great metaphor for disability, and also, I guess, neurodivergence in general as well, where it's like, oh, you only have so much energy to complete a certain task. And, you know, sometimes you have to get other things done instead. So you don't have the energy to earn money instead. But yeah, I thought that was really effectively created. And just that stress, like it was just quite stressful in the beginning, because I was like, oh God, I don't think I'm doing this right because I'm really struggling. And then I was like, that's the point. It's a game about capitalism. I'm supposed to struggle. So
Yeah, I should say that just for listeners, the setup of the game, as I said, you're this kind of android robot guy, and you, because you're on the run from this, you've escaped from this corporation. They had this drug that they give you, this medicine, and if you don't take the medicine, you will eventually die. So at the beginning of the game, you have no way at all to get that medicine. Quite quickly, there is an avenue to do so. And as Sophie said, it's very expensive. But that's the thing, your health will tick down every cycle or day. And eventually, I mean, I don't know what happens if you go all the way to 0. Presumably, you die. But that is like an ever-present pressure on you that, you know, this is something you're going to have to find somehow. There are some other ways to get it in the game, but that's like part of the pressure put on you.
One of the interesting things that I found in my playthrough was that there was a time where, as part of the sort of randomness of it, because I think like it does feel like there is quite a lot of I can see why it is the kind of game that people like to play a bunch of times, because I genuinely think you could have a completely different experience. I had a point where I just got given 2 bits of stabilizer, the medicine, reasonably easily, and that gave me quite a few cycles where I didn't really have to think about that as part of the game, which suddenly meant that it was up. And there was other things that I think, as I said, I think there was maybe twice where I almost got to an ending, and then for whatever reason, the game sent me down. It was like, no, in a way that was really interesting. So like suddenly then that became a thing, was that a lot of my playthrough was about, I don't know, investing myself in a thing that might happen and then having that denied. Often in ways that actually made for really good beats. I don't know how much we want to like spoil potential things that might happen, but I got quite involved in I forget their names, the the guy and the child,
Lemon Mina.
Lemon Mina.
It's a beautiful
Yeah,
storyline. Yeah.
Yeah, I got so emotionally
It's just so
invested in it,
invested.
and it kept going for quite. I got quite a lot of it. In fact, they're still around in my story, and we almost got on the ship to escape, which I'm fairly sure is an ending that you can get.
Mm.
And then this whole thing happens where they can't get, and I was like, and it really hit because I'd invested so much into it, and clearly there is a version of this game where you can do all of that, and that can be the ending. The game has to make that all feel like you've done enough stuff that would be a payoff ending. So to get there and then not get the ending was like, oof, like that really hit in a way that was, yeah, I don't know if you designed the game in a different way, whether you could quite do it in the same way.
You're so right that everything requires so much effort. Like every sort of storyline to explore does require a lot of effort. Like I think as soon as I met Lemon Mina, I had to sort of remind myself to go and do babysitting like every day. Because I was like, I really want him to get on this thing. So I'm just going to go babysit like every day, even if that's really impractical.
Yeah, for me, in a lot of games
Yeah.
like this, including this one, like at the start, I kind of go into autopilot. Like I work out like how I'm going to spend my dice every day. Like I'm always going to do the same thing. But when I met Lemon Mina, like I just couldn't do it anymore. Like I was too emotionally invested.
Out of the window.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Same. I think I actually also met them. So immediately when I got into a groove. Go ahead, Tom.
I definitely had things like that where I was like, there were certain tasks at different points where I was like, if I get a 6, I'm going straight to that place because I've got a
Yes.
task that is dangerous, and if that fails, but then also, yeah, so with that storyline, I always had this thing of like, I had a really clear sense that if I finished building the ship before I'd babysat enough that Lem could have an entry into the drawer as well, I was like, oh, I imagine what happens is the ship goes and you fail that thing. I don't know if that's correct or not, but there was definitely other things where if I accidentally did one thing before the other thing failed because you've sort of moved a different part of the story on. And so, yeah, building the ship was like my 6th thing for a while. I was like, great, that's where they're
My
going.
6th thing.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah,
that.
this element of it is a bit annoying. I think there's a bit that I don't know if any of you got to, where essentially it's where the DLC comes in. So eventually you meet these two characters who ask you to do something, and then a big red message box comes up on the screen saying, "This is the DLC. There are 3 sections of it." And they do say, to be fair, it does say this is for high level play. But the first thing they ask for are these 2 mushrooms, which are basically the food on the station. And later on, I found myself in a situation where I just had 2 mushrooms because of something else. I had nothing to do with them. So I thought, you know what? Okay, I'm not hardly a high level player at this point, but I'll just chuck in the two mushrooms to just see what the next bit is, and then I probably won't go any further, but just see what it is. And when you add those 2 mushrooms, and my advice to you home and the rest of you is do not put those mushrooms in until you are ready. Because as soon as you do, they say, oh, wow, okay, we've only got 12 cycles to get all this stuff done. And look, there's so much stuff to be done. And then
my
suddenly
God.
the screen fills with like hundreds of activities, which all need to be done and are all very difficult. And you've got 12 to do it in. So I just kind of desperately scrambled through it. I was a bit annoyed that they weren't a little bit clearer that time that timer would appear when
Are
I
you
put those
suggesting they
mushrooms
put
in.
some kind of red box that says don't do
The
this
thing.
unless you're...
Yeah, like this
Don't do
this
this
starts some
unless you've
type of
completed the
timer.
game.
Look, they said that, but I thought, oh well, look, all right. But like this does kind of reveal a kind of a secret the game has, which is where they basically establish a level of threat that is actually kind of a phantom. It's not really there. So when I managed to get a fraction of that stuff done before the 12 are done, because I also had other things going on. I also had other things ticking down and other time limits going on elsewhere, stuff I'd actually dedicated before. So I was just kind of ready for this to just be a disaster. But even with only a fraction of it being done, it progressed to a degree that it would move the story forward. I don't know how it would have been different if I'd got lots of it done or all of it done. Maybe it would have progressed differently. But it didn't like block me off. It didn't end because that was my fear the whole time. I was
Mm.
just like, oh shit, I'm just going to completely lock the DLC off from myself going forward. But no, that doesn't happen. Maybe if you do nothing, that happens. I don't know. But and that kind of happens a number of times in the game. Like you mentioned earlier, we're getting a bit more into spoilers here. The hunter that comes to get you, you could think, oh shit, this hunter's going to get me. And if I don't get this tracker off me before he comes, is it's going to be game over. It isn't game over when the hunter arrives. More things happen, gets more complicated. There is a timer later on that I think probably is the big real timer. I managed to avert the what happens in that myself. But there are a number of times when it suggests that things are very serious and
Mm.
really that aren't. As you mentioned, you are at the beginning you're really worried about getting this medicine, and then a bunch of quest lines just throw you free vials of medicine at the end. So I think it's quite good, but I mean maybe that DLC issue kind of just pulled the curtain away from the Wizard of Oz a little bit too much. But I will say, if you play this game and like me was like very kind of overwhelmed at the start, and I initially bounced off, do know, and this actually having heard that it did this a bit kind of brought me back to it and made me feel a lot better about playing it. Is that it's actually going to really sway the weights in your favor quite a lot.
Mm.
So it's a lot less hard than it seems.
Yeah, I actually also got to the DLC and said that I said that I was a pro gamer, selected
Oh, you did it.
yeah, selected that I was a high
I've got
level
two
guy.
mushrooms.
Exactly. So yeah, if we're doing spoilers now, I got to this point. I got to the DLC and I accepted it at the point where I was like just climaxing, just sort of peaking with one of the
Mm.
All right.
endings. I was like so close to the ending that I knew physically I would not be able to complete the requirements of this DLC in time. But for me, that made it a really interesting moral choice actually. The ending that I was getting towards was the Lemon Mina ending where they escape on the ship and you escape with them.
I was so invested in that happening.
That's the one I'm invested in, and
Yeah.
I've just met that storyline, and I'm already invested.
Exactly. So then I have this decision to make. Like I've been given this big task that I know that I can't do both. I've got to either
Yeah.
save Lemon Mina or, and again we're doing spoilers, so what the DLC task involves is
Mm.
rescuing a ship of refugees. So it's like this really big moral thing for me. Like it seems obvious to me that the refugees are obviously just as deserving of my support
Yeah.
as Lemon Mina. But I was so emotionally invested in Lemon Mina that I just couldn't help it. I had to save them. So I was like frantically spending all of I was trying to work out how much I could afford to spend on the refugees to help them as much as possible before I left the ship. So for me, the sort of springing onto at the last minute kind of vibe that you're talking about, I felt that feel really, that was really effective for me. Like I really got into that. It felt like a real moral choice, and it really highlighted how emotionally invested I was.
That's such like a ethical quandary of the two people whose names and faces that you know to the like
Mm.
100 more abstract.
Mm. It's a real
Yeah, I
trolley
think.
problem.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I suspect that you're more of a true gamer than I am, in that you're able to get more kind of emotionally swept up in the role playing of it, whereas I play games basically with one eye on always making sure I can play as much of the content as I possibly can.
Mm.
I want to
Mm.
see every little cranny. I've got like what I think is all the endings except the DLC stuff, but all of them you can just say, no, I'm not going to go with Nina. No, I'm not going to do whatever. I'm just going to
Mm.
stay living on the station. And it's kind of a bit weird because it does treat that as like a grand philosophical choice I just made. But in reality, I just want to
Mm.
see the rest of the game, you know? But yeah, it probably would be better if I could, I don't know, throw myself into the role playing more and just get swept up in it.
Well, your real story was that you became at home on the station and you didn't
Yeah.
have to leave.
That's exactly. You made a home out of it. Yeah. I think
True.
something I do like about the game is how well it balances. And you said this earlier, Ed, is that the world is quite cynical, but the actual game is not very as harsh as it sort of makes out to be. I really love how it balances that cynicism with the sort of really endearing, heartwarming stories of the of the characters, because I'm of the mindset that if you're going to tell a very cynical story, if you're going to have a world that's very cynically built or functions in a very cynical way, then you have to justify it, like you have to earn it. And I thought it did that really well with the sort of character stories of there's just, it's like, well, I actually, as we've said, like, well, actually, all of my good dice are going towards Lemon Mina now. Like that's what I care about. The characters are just really well written that way. Yeah, I love that balancing of the cynicism with the really heartwarming characters, where it feels like the world's out to get you, but the characters, you can make friends quite easily, and they can be really sort of, you obviously, in the most cynical interpretation, you can get things out of the friends that you make, but like more than anything, it's just like, oh, I just kind of want to spend more time getting to know this character and doing nice things for this character because I think this character deserves it, and I would really like for this character to see success in some way, shape, or form. And that's a really good motivator for me to keep playing because I found the sort of strategy of the dice very difficult. I still kind of feel like I'm doing a lot of guesswork. I'm not very good at maths, so that might be why I just sort of get really quite overwhelmed by the numbers. But it's very easy to me to be like, my high level dice, I'm going to put that to my high level tasks, my high priority tasks. And that sort of lack of sort of cold cynicism there really helped me to get a bit more engaged in the sort of numbers of it all.
I think it's really interesting that everyone got engaged with that Lemon Mina story in a way that like the sort of like what I don't know, maybe this is guy that's only seen Boss Baby, but the sort of Watch Dogs-esque thing where there's like another world on there's like the digital bit
Oh yeah,
where
the
you
cyber zone or whatever it's
which for me didn't really. I hacked the highest thing or whatever, and it didn't really go anywhere. I don't know. I didn't find that as satisfying. I think
same.
I quite liked when I can't remember what they ended up being called, but when you've got Neovend, the vending machine with a brain in it, that I was quite on. I don't know. I was a bit more on board because I was like, oh, this is really interesting, and also it takes the thing of like your character being a sort of robot with a sentience put in it, and it's like, oh look, you could have been. You could be a vending machine right now, and that kind of added a layer to it. And then gradually, I felt the pressure of needing to do it, but I think the stories that work really well in the game are the ones that you feel like. I think sometimes with games, I've got a bit of a thing of like, am I just doing digital chores? And like, if I'm really emotionally engaged, like I'm absolutely not. I don't think I'm quite good at just doing the chores in the game anyway. I'm like, oh, well, I probably should collect all the whatever's in the zone. But I think the ones that really worked are those ones where you've got this character who, through one or maybe two pictures and just text and a sense of sense of quite real stakes, I think, in the game, it is quite good at making some of those storylines really draw you in on that level of things. And I wonder whether different players might find different ones really interesting. They might be like, oh, the bounty hunter, I'm going to get really into that because that's...
I have something to add about the Lemon Mina storyline, but you can go ahead, Ed.
I'm just very engaged.
Oh, I thought you were waiting. Okay.
He just looks like he's ready to pounce at
I
all
thought you were
times.
ready. Yeah, I feel like, I kind of wonder if the reason that all of us have connected to Lemon Mina in particular is because it's the most sort of relevant class. It's one of the most relevant class struggles that we see in terms of like, it's a very real world example of like the struggles of getting childcare and the sort of preventative way that struggle of getting childcare can prevent people obviously from earning money and supporting themselves and their children. And I think like offering to take care of those kids is actually one of the sort of more realistic ways that a lot of us have the opportunity to just sort of help out people in our communities. So it did feel like this very sort of grounded example of like something that you could realistically have an opportunity to do. And it's like, oh, well, I'm happy that you asked me. I'm just glad that you asked, because if I hadn't come upon you at this time where you just so happened to need someone to take care of your child, and the fact that you trusted me as well, I think the fact that he trusts you so quickly with this obviously extremely important task means that I trust him so much more. Like he could do anything after this point, because I'm just like, I just trust you so much because you trusted me with your kid's life. And I feel like that bonding experience is really important. And like I said, quite reflective, I feel like, of a lot of a very realistic opportunity that some of us might actually come across in our sort of communities. Like I know, I have a friend who recently gave birth, and the first thing were just like, let us know if you need us to come over just to like take care of your kids so that you could just spend some time alone, let alone like also working on supporting yourself and stuff like that. It felt very real world to me.
Yeah, I think politically, this game, I will say I have maybe a slightly different position on that, which is I think it's a bit more cynical than I think. I think it's a bit more cynical than you do.
Mm.
Basically, mainly through the storyline of the guy who's trying to take out your tracker. I can't remember his name. Is it Fink or
Feng.
something?
Thing.
Yeah, Feng. Yeah, that storyline is about the kind of history of the space station that you're on. So it comes clear. Well, not terribly clear to be honest, but you can eventually manage to piece together that the space station used to be run by some big, intergalactic corporation that then collapsed. And then on the station, there was some sort of revolution. And since then, it's been run, or at least this part of the station has been run by a group called Havenage that appears to be kind of some kind of cross between just the actual state and a trade union. And it's got quite a cynical view on that organization. It seems to be the vibe I get is that it's like maybe one of the better things, but it's quite corrupt. A large part of Feng's story involves a guy who it turns out was originally in that corporation who just somehow managed to hang around and then insert himself into Havenage, and it turns out is like basically corrupt and is running it. And the big twist at the end is that this guy has been working with some other evil corporation to get them to do awful things on the station, basically, and you have to expose him. But this seems like quite a cynical look at something like that, and I'm not even saying that's necessarily wrong. The kind of vibe I got is it's inspired by a lot of the bigger trade unions we have in this country, many of which are a bit rubbish in many ways, and kind of taken over by kind of Blairite careerists and so on. That type of thing. But it definitely, if I had to kind of say what the overall thesis politically of the game is, and I think one of it maybe is Feng actually. There is a character who pretty much outright says this: is that systems kind of don't matter, or I'm not saying they're bad, but they're kind of almost inherently corrupt. What matters are your connections with individual people. And while I wouldn't say that's inherently wrong, I would kind of say that as kind of leftists, we would, I don't know, maybe prioritize systems a bit higher, a bit higher in the list, and saying, well, you've just got to put your faith in individuals is, something of a neoliberal position. But I do think, I'm probably being a bit harsh on it. I think it's definitely a left-wing game in general. But I do think that kind of maybe unthinking capitalist realism has kind of seeped into it a little bit with that kind of position.
Yeah, I was going to say I disagree with the sort of analysis of it being neoliberal. For me, it read much more anarchist, to be honest, in terms of just rejecting, obviously, power structures, which, obviously anarchists, I think, believe that, any kind of power structure is going to corrupt. So for me, it felt more anarchist than neoliberal. And I didn't mind that. I didn't mind the fact that I felt like it was a bit more of an anarchist perspective. Like obviously on the left, we do sort of defend and what's the word, like pin up sort of unions a lot. And I do agree with that, obviously. But like I also do understand that for me, I wouldn't necessarily identify myself as an anarchist. But for one of the reasons that I don't identify myself as an anarchist is because like I do find things a little bit difficult to like, oh, how do we get from A to B when it comes to anarchism? Like, how do we get to an entire dismantling of the state, et cetera, et cetera? And I kind of liked this perspective as a way to be like, well, this is kind of how we're envisioning it. This is the sort of thesis of anarchism. For me, it actually helped me see things a bit more clearly on that side of the argument in terms of doing away with power structures entirely. And yeah, I think like for me, it felt very, the sort of balance of the cynicism very much came from the emphasis on community and building meaningful relationships, and as opposed to like, oh, you gotta trust who you're gonna trust, and some people are gonna betray you, whatever. I didn't interpret it that much as just like we really just have to like rely on supporting each other, as opposed to relying on an organization to support us. Which like I actually appreciated that sort of alternative look and that
Hmm.
alternative sort of organization of a
Cool.
society. I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm gonna read almost all the text in the voice Sophie just did now. I think you probably ruined the game for me, but
Thanks.
that's a. Oh yeah,
Well, I
maybe
when
good
I
point.
because I was reading a lot of the voices out loud, and
Oh,
I did
cool.
voice Dragos like that, where I was like, "Hey, welcome to the space station." So, hey, I'm walking here,
I'm spacing here.
spacing here.
I definitely think it. I don't know. Maybe an interesting comparison is something like because I think there's elements of this story that if you just explained them to someone could sound like, oh yeah, I kind of get it. I've kind of seen that before in terms of like, I don't know. Yeah, there's like this foundation, and that's effectively like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, or there's this thing that is basically this, and you're kind of like, oh yeah, it's that, but it's these things we know, but in space. In a similar way too, can anyone remember the Russell T Davies show Years and Years?
Of course.
I said,
I went out of my way to avoid watching that.
so I did initially because when I sort of read the thing of like the sort of blurb of it, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, it's like Trump happens and then things keep getting worse and like yawn, boring. But then actually through a lot of the emotional storylines in that, you kind of you end up getting into it and you're like, oh, actually, no, this is you are making me feel these things in a way that makes storylines which could feel really cliche and obvious feel really interesting and lived in. However, that at the very end kind of, I don't know, I felt really let down because basically one of them does a speech and they're like, well, aren't we all really to blame for what's happened here? We've all done thing. And it's like, sorry, one of them was in like a sort of effectively a concentration camp. And she's like, aren't we all to blame, really? And it's like, no, I don't think. Like, no, some of these people have had a horrible time and have like, and this doesn't feel like it does that. I think
No.
there is a correct thing in like because actually the thing with like one of these organizations is a union, one of them is a something else. I think at times, like to what extent Havenage is a union and to what extent it's kind of just like an organization you come up with in within the sort of text of the game maybe doesn't come out. So, like I've only just met the sort of solar punk bit on the other, which maybe also turns out to be rug pull. Actually, they're all evil as well. I'm not sure, but
No, I would say, as far as I can tell, no. The Haifa commune, which is what I was talking
okay,
about, seem to be pretty decent, but you don't really find out much about their internal politics so much.
yeah, but yeah. So I don't think it's a like. I guess the difference is that it's these systems bad and it's difficult to build any kind of system where there is a distribution of power that isn't bad, rather than going like, well, there's always going to be bad people, so I guess we just got to keep doing things the way we're doing them and just sort of keep on trucking.
Yeah, I definitely, I don't think it's a right wing game by any imagination. I just think, I don't know. I wish it at least engaged a bit more explicitly with the thinking of like, so there's clear comparisons in this game with Disco Elysium, the lefty game of all time, Jewel of All Our Hearts. And that's a game that is very clearly about, oh, there was this revolution and then it was defeated by these centrists and all this, and how that feels and what that means. And I do wish there was a bit more clear discussion about that kind of stuff in this game, since it does set up a world that is recovering from having had a revolution in living memory. I wish there was a bit more of that. And my vague feeling of it was that it's like, well, it's really about individuals. Don't, what are you going to do about systems? Are not, they're never going to be good. That's the kind of vibe I get. So as I said, I don't think it's right wing. I think I'm going to go out and say Gareth Damien Martin, who is appearing at Games Transformed, is a comrade. Um, but I just kind of got the feeling that there is as I said, it's got just a tinge of, as I say, unthinking capitalist realism about it. It's just like, well, yeah, it's just about individuals, man.
Yeah, I don't really agree. I don't think, Alex, that it's about individuals. I think it's about. I think it is about a societal perspective, but it's using the individual as a way into that, and it's looking at how the individual is like shaped by the society that they're a part of, and their decisions are constrained by it. I would say the game fundamentally is about what it's like to be a person who has a physical body and has to occupy that in a particular society. And the society within the game has been constructed to like emphasize the parts of our society that constrain us. That's how I'm understanding the game. So while it's focusing on the individual in one sense, like I don't think it's doing that in like a neoliberal way. I think it's doing that to emphasize this wider societal points. I think your character is a being whose the society has made their body be an issue in that society. So I think this would be an especially resonant game for people who have the kind of body that our real life society makes an issue. So maybe, maybe disabled people, maybe trans people, maybe people who are just poor, so that it's like physically difficult for them to like fulfill their fundamental needs. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I mean there's
Mm.
definitely obviously the individualistic element to it, like more so than in Disco Elysium, in that the like specific body is the way in to think about the
Converge.
society. But
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair to say I don't think that makes Citizen Sleeper any less of like a structures based game than Disco Elysium in a way. I don't think Citizen Sleeper is less radical or less left wing than Disco Elysium as a result.
We're going to find out which one is more left wing in a future segment at the beginning of the show, along the lines of who would Mark's main, but you'll have to wait till a mystery point in the future to find out.
Tune back in
that.
for who would Palanzas play next time.
Yeah, we're going to have to workshop the name, I think.
Yeah, I definitely found that the bits, like that I was really connecting that feeling, like less of what am I going to do and more what can I let slide. Like actually
Yeah.
my capacity is so limited that rather than me going like, what are the things I actively want to choose to go out and do, I'm actually making the choice to go like, okay, what can wait? What do I think is unimportant enough that if that fails, I'm okay with that, or the game will be okay with that, in a way that, like, I don't know, at busy points in my life where I'm like, oh goodness, in order to, I don't know, keep things ticking over, I've had to say yes to all of these things, and like all of these people want things from me, and like who can I let down? Who's going to be the least angry about it today?
We thank you for choosing us, Tom.
Thank you.
But no, like I've
We're definitely getting a 6 dice right now. This is the pure 6 dice.
But like I've definitely had things like that in the past where you're just like,
Yeah.
oh goodness, I've had to say yes to all these things because if I don't, like, there's not enough money coming in, or there's not enough, like, or there's or so often in our sort of world and economy, it's kind of like, well, maybe there's not even money coming in from that thing now, but there could be in the future. Like, and you have like you don't want to close any road down, and so in life you end up in these places where you're like, okay, well, out of these 5 people today, who are the 3 that I can just be like, sorry, I didn't get the thing done because I'm on the treadmill of capitalism. And I think the game I've just got to a bit of the game where actually it's much smoother and I don't have lots of ticking down things. And I found that less of a, like, I actually found it quite engaging to, I don't know, take some time away from my life that sometimes feels like that, to be like, oh, what if I felt like that, but I'm looking at a screen? Which I am most of the time anyway. But yeah, so I think that aspect of like, what does it feel like to be within that system? It captures really well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I do think I do love the kind of simulation of capitalism element of it. That, like, yeah, you're just like trying to battle through and do what you can every day, even though, as I said, a lot of it is kind of fakes a little bit in your favor. And I should say that, like, I guess this is a spoilers for you guys. I don't think you've got to this bit, but pretty much towards the end of it, you get to a position where you essentially no longer need money. You can basically get food and the medicine through work alone. And so you can, if you want, you can completely divorce yourself from the entire economic system. So, as I said, I do think Gareth is a comrade. I do think there is a left-wing heart
One thing I want to say is
beating in the core
what this
of it.
game really reminded me of, I'm not sure if you guys have seen this, but it's the TV show Severance.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's quite interesting, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I won't give any spoilers for that show, but apart from the premise, but they both kind of explore a copy of a consciousness that's sort of separated or removed from the sort of primary version of the consciousness and then set to work. And the secondary one still kind of is the main consciousness, like they're like a copy of them, or split in half or something like that. But there's a sense underneath in which the protagonist is sort of not the owner of their own life. There's the kind of a theme of slavery to some extent, but that aside, there's the theme of heightened exploitation, which again like really speaks to the moment we're in, especially with them doing like the gig economy kind of stuff. It's like talks about the hyper exploitation that a lot of people are facing in the same way that Severance does to some extent.
Yeah, that's interesting. I not considered that because they are like, I don't know, aesthetically and vibe wise, like completely different. But they do have similar themes. Yeah, I not thought of it.
I think, yeah, I guess the idea of like how you are. I also didn't think of it, but it makes sense now that the way that you are so expendable, like being the main character, having this sort of split consciousness, you're so expendable. And I guess I don't know if the question ever gets answered of like whose consciousness are you split from? Do we know anything about the supposedly human conscious that we're split from? And that does feel very Severance adjacent of like, just being a byproduct of a human being in this very sort of capitalist way of like, let's try and get as much out of you as possible and then split the conscious so that you just don't really feel guilty. And then you do become disposable. Like in Severance, the sort of innies become more disposable than the ones on the outside. But then who decides what's disposable? Like, is it if you have a sentience or a conscience? Because I clearly have both in this game. So I didn't think about it, but that's actually a really good point.
Yeah, and there's this other thing where they both Severance and Citizen Sleeper kind of treat it almost as a moral dilemma, but it's a strange kind of moral dilemma, isn't it? Because it's a kind of moral dilemma which I feel like is very straightforward. Like, we know what to make of this. Is it okay to make a copy of yourself and then enslave them? No.
Don't do it.
No is the hot take. That's the answer to that question.
Yeah, exactly.
If you'll allow me to announce the official Red Barrel
Exactly,
line,
yeah.
don't do that.
I think we might have to have a meeting about that. Actually, let's not make any hasty proclamations.
We haven't gone through our consensus decision-making
Look,
process.
if I could get my innie to do this podcast, then I would.
No, my innie is doing this podcast.
Oh, wow.
My outie's never heard a single second of it. God, lucky him. I also want to say one other thing, which I got from watching the Games Transform 2023 appearance of Gareth. They said that one of the core things for them in designing this game was working out what would happen if you rolled ones and twos. And I hadn't really thought about that, but I think that's been dealt with in a really effective way. It'd be so easy to make a game like this where if you got bad rolls, you just sort of feel like you're fucked and like you're going to have a really bad time. Or on the other hand, the game could feel like quite light and breezy, and you know full well that everything will be fine regardless of your dice rolls. So I think the decision to have a sort of special second place to put your bad dice rolls was like a really effective way of overcoming that problem. Like, you still feel the stress, the nervousness about wanting to get good dice rolls. Or the dice rolls feel important, but you also don't feel like your day is totally ruined if you get those ones and twos. So I thought I hadn't thought of it before, but when I heard them say it, I was like, yeah, that's actually, they've dealt with that in, I think, a really effective way.
It's a really good game design. Yeah.
I think it ramps
later
up.
on. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, well, I might be about to say the same thing that you did, but like later on, it kind of ramps up in that sort of otherworld bit, the kind of techno part of the game, where you suddenly do need to be using slightly higher dice in it. Maybe not for very long, but it does mean that for that window of the game, you do then sort of get split. But I think it also, because it doesn't tell you the lower dice are good for that, or that the lower dice might be good for babysitting or for, whatever the safe tasks are, and it lets you find that out, you kind of get to feel like you personally you're
Gained
like, oh,
it.
I'm going to use my ones on the hunter stuff because I'm really smart, even though it's clearly designed to do that, but it kind of lets you feel like you've worked that out.
Yeah, I feel the same way. You feel like you've really done something there.
true.
You've really like cracked the code.
It took me a really long time to connect those dots. And today when I was like, the hacking on Era needs 1 and 2s, I can just use my shit dice. But like for the past like 5 or so cycles, I've just been getting excellent dice, which was really weird. Like I just
It's
kept
not a
getting amazing
competition
dice, which I
trophy.
don't know if that's just, I'm just really good at the game. It is though, and I'm winning. And I'm joking. But yeah, it exposes that really, really, I found that out really late. I think something else I did like about the dice as well, like I do I've been thinking about this in terms of like choices in games and how do we do choices in games that don't create these really big games that become then we have to do lots of different sort of like sprawling trees of choices, etc. And I think games like this are really good at that. Like Disco Elysium kind of has that vibe, and also Pentiment, which Pentiment doesn't have dice, but Pentiment has a sort of series of, I don't need to talk about it in detail, but like sort of persuasions that can go wrong depending on how you've treated this person in the past, that kind of thing. And what I like about all of these games is that like if you fail at one particular thing, it kind of sucks because it's like, oh, what would I have seen or what would have happened? But it doesn't actually change the entire course of the game for you. It's just like a slight change in how it might have happened. Like either way, the story of the trajectory is mostly the same. And I feel like games where they pretend that you're making these big, substantial choices that change the narrative, they can feel really, really unrewarding when it turns out that your choices weren't actually impacting the narrative. But games like this, where the way things unfold feels like it's having an impact on at least your experience of the narrative, and therefore it feels like a very personalized experience, even though actually things might not have changed that much. Like, I don't know, I think of the fact that Disco Elysium, my first playthrough of Disco Elysium, I still haven't finished it, but my first playthrough, one of the reasons I haven't finished it was because my very first playthrough, I died getting my tie off the fan. So I was like, what the fuck is this game? And so, like, it took me a really long time for me to restore my trust in the game that I wasn't just going to die all the time. Significantly, a lot of the other choices are not as punishing as that, right? But, like, that's a really fun way of being like, oh, well, it's right at the beginning. You died. I guess you just start again. And it feels very low stakes, but it also does change your experience of the story. And I really love that in choice games.
I think I quickly worked out that as far as I know, what the like dialogue you pick, I don't think has a
Doesn't matter.
large
Yeah.
impact. But
I think there are certain points where you do make choices that affect the story.
Yeah.
There was one thing where I thought, have I spoken to this person wrong, and therefore, and that's why it suddenly just said drive failed. But but in a lot of cases, I don't think it matters a huge amount. You select one and it comes back to another, or like the conversation guides it back to where. But I think I was sort of okay with that in the sense that
I love
was
that.
like, well, there is all this other stuff that I know that really does matter. And therefore, it, as you say, it's not pretending that if I say yes or no, there's an entire different game I'm about to play out there.
Yeah, I really like that. It just feels like giving me a lot more agency over the playthrough as well, and giving me a lot of time back as well, where it feels like in games where they sort of, again, maybe pretend to have these choices or do actually have these choices, it can be difficult to decide between, like, do I ask about the screen or do I ask about the wallet? I'm like, am I not going to find out about the screen if I ask about the wallet? And it's like, oh, I just get to ask multiple questions, like a real life conversation. That's really nice. As opposed to, it feels like you're making me choose between a rock and a hard place, and I don't really understand why yet. It's very nice that it gives you these opportunities to just experiment and see where things happen or go. And if you don't get an opportunity to explore something else, I'm like, well, I guess I didn't need to. I guess I didn't need to know that thing. I guess I found out what I needed anyways.
I don't know. In real life, I always only give people 2 options in conversation, and then you're done.
You're just constantly holding 2 items and just going,
Yes.
Yeah, I've got apples or I've got orange, and you will pick and you will have just one of those.
Sure about that?
This is the point of no
98% of
return. You must
conversationalists
choose one.
chose Apple.
I'll remember that.
I think probably we should kind of wrap this up. Does anyone have any burning thoughts they want to get out
About the
before we're done?
No, I liked it.
I liked it. I
Yeah,
like it.
Yeah.
I will probably continue playing
Yeah,
it.
6 out of 10. We'll play again.
Above average.
Has anyone heard anything about Citizen Sleeper 2?
I've heard it's good. That's probably about it. That's probably all I know. Apparently it's about, like, you're not in a city or in a place. You're, like, on a spaceship going through space and you're choosing where you go, I think.
I was about to say, wait, aren't we doing that? And they were like, oh, you're choosing where we go.
No. You're like going from location to location through space. I think. I could be wrong about it.
That's completely different.
I don't really know much about it.
Oh, what? You've got a little character that walks around?
No, but
Maybe
you have to
just pilot
choose your
the ship,
location.
Like, you choose.
Yeah, you choose. You're like, oh, you're
where
going
it
to go
goes.
to this star system or this star system, and then I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, you know what? You can probably find out more if you attend Games Transform this year, where Gareth Damien Martin will be speaking about Citizen
Whoa.
Sleeper 2, and you can find out all about
And
it.
will
This
there
is how
be
it
any
goes.
big YouTubers
Wow.
at the event?
I mean, at least one.
At least one.
I
It'd
think
be really
I'm.
awkward
And
if he
more.
dropped out on us now. So with Citizen Sleeper done, we cannot help but move on to the news as much as we'd like to avoid it. And first up, we're going to have a lovely plagiarism-tinged story from Sophie. And don't worry, it's not her plagiarism. It's the subject at hand.
Or is it? I'm joking. It's fine. So I guess it's not a super lovely story, as with a lot of the things in our news segment. So to summarize, basically what happened was that the game publisher Bungie has been accused of plagiarism concerning the lifting of art and designs in their upcoming release Marathon from a designer, Fern Hook, who goes by the pseudonym Antireal. Marathon is an upcoming cyberpunk first-person shooter game announced in May 2023, which is due to be released in 2025. And Antireal, the artist in question, posted comparison photos of the plagiarized design on her Blue Sky. And they're really damning images if you haven't seen them.
They're very bad. They're very bad.
They're extremely damning, showing side-by-side comparisons of designs from posters she created in 2017 and decals and logos, and kind of the entire design language, though, in its entirety, that appear in the Marathon video game on things like ships and other objects, and just the sort of branding of the game generally. It's basically a carbon copy. It's a bad look. She writes on the sort of initial Blue Sky post where she sort of calls out the design similarities, quote, Bungie is of course not obligated to hire me when making a game that draws overwhelmingly from the same design language I have refined for the last decade. But clearly my work was good enough to pillage for ideas and plaster all over their game without pay or attribution. She continued, she talks about how disheartened she was that she does not have the financial resources to pursue the copyright infringement legally, and how she's, quote, tired of designers from huge companies mood boarding and parasitizing my designs while I struggle to make a living. She talks about her own difficulty of earning money as a designer and says she's, quote unquote, lost count of the number of times similar art thefts have happened to her. So pretty upsetting. Obviously, this happens to artists all the time. And that's not even, just by like actual entities. And this isn't even taking into consideration the art theft that goes on with AI and stuff. So pretty shocking to begin with. Bungie did respond through their Twitter account, I guess I have to say X, of the Marathon design team. Quote, we immediately investigated a concern regarding unauthorized use of artist decals in Marathon and confirmed that a former Bungie artist included these in a texture sheet that was ultimately used in-game. Obviously interesting in that quote is they say artist decals. It's much more than just the decals. It's like kind of the design language of the entire game. And also former artist. That's quite significant as well. As well as like standard apology fare, including a commitment to reviewing of the current in-game assets, specifically those done by the quote-unquote former Bungie artist responsible for plagiarizing Antireal's designs, which implies that they were fired, obviously, and implementing, quote, stricter checks to document all artist contributions. Twitter commenters mention that the game's overall design is heavily inspired by Antireal's work, as well as that the entire Marathon art team follows Antireal on Twitter, which is a terrible look. Obviously, this response is not enough. Antireal hasn't responded to that response directly. As far as I know, she's just sort of thanked people who supported her. A lot of people donated to her Ko-fi immediately after sort of announcing this, but I don't think she actually made any responses to Bungie's response. So Bungie's found itself in similar predicaments in the past, including fan art being used in cutscenes and trailers, as well as an ongoing copyright infringement lawsuit between Kelsey Martineau, a writer that claims Bungie directly took storyline elements from his original work published in 2017 for Destiny 2's Red War storyline. The future of Marathon, the game itself, looks uncertain as Bungie is facing increased pressure regarding the success of the game for fear of further absorption by Sony. So there's been a described morale freefall experienced by the team working on it currently, which is really depressing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I think it's probably not too far of a leap to conclude that plagiarism like this is inevitable in an industry famous for its crunches that lead to like 65 to 80 hours for work weeks for extended periods of time, which are often uncompensated as well. I can't help but also think of the art theft implications of AI, which will also likely be more commonly used in the game industry in the future. Yeah, I guess also an honorable mention to the commenters on Bungie's post blaming the theft on incompetent artists that were hired because of woke culture. That was really
Of
fun to
course, we
read
love those
about.
guys.
Yeah, where it was just like, well, if you want artists who are actually good at art, you should just hire people that aren't woke and have silly hair colors. Then you'll get art. So yeah, that's basically the sort of gist of the story.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Marathon's been having a pretty bad time of it.
Mm.
People, they had a big, a beta, and people were not terribly impressed. But the one thing everyone kind of agreed on it was that wow, it has a really interesting and arresting art style.
Has a really
And
beautiful art style.
now that's down. That's a detriment to it. I should say, I don't know, maybe to just cover our arse legally, perhaps that basic Bungie had I think they before this came out, they had a pre-scheduled live stream where they're going to go over the game, and it got kind of taken over by this issue by having the art director on it, and he read out a quite long statement that basically the point of it was to one apologize and all that, but also to separate it out as this being a set specific art pieces and not the overall style.
Mm.
And to be fair, while the overall styles do look very similar, while it's quite a unique style for a video game, it's not really that unique style for graphic design. It was very big in the early 2000s. And really, it does seem that they're kind of both drawing from the same well
Mm.
stylistically. So they probably haven't completely lifted their art style from this person, but they have lifted large amounts of art specifically, which still isn't great. And that live stream went very badly. All the commenters were constantly the Marathon. This new game is based on a series of games they made back in the 90s, which I've not played, but apparently has a kind of a tagline of "Escape and I become God." And all the commenters were commenting "Plagiarize and I become God" together. So at least that
Great.
was fun. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be pretty bad for Bungie. Like people basically expect Marathon to be at least some level of failure. Probably not quite as bad as Concord was, but yeah, it's
Just
not
looking
great.
up the game now, it looks like they've pulled quite a lot of
Right.
the marketing for the game as a result of this.
Yeah, I've heard they've done that.
Mm.
There's been rumors it's going to get delayed because I mean, even
Mm.
before this happened, people were like pretty down on it. They said there wasn't enough content. To be honest, it's an extraction shooter, which is really hot right now. But there's a lot of
That's
doubt
like
as to
like Helldivers was an extraction shooter as
no,
well, is
no,
that right? No?
that game you played with the Pac-Man robots in the ghost houses.
Oh. Okay.
You know the one.
Oh, Repo.
Repo.
Oh.
That's
Ah.
quite similar to
Ah.
Extract. You go
Which I
in a
really
place.
enjoy. But
You go in a place, you get as much loot and stuff and
okay,
gear
okay,
as you
okay,
can, and then you
okay.
get out. But
Okay.
the difference with this is that if you meet other players, they can kill you and steal all your stuff permanently.
Ah.
It's just
Okay,
gone.
okay.
You lose this amazing gun you found.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
people are already quite skeptical as to how mass market
Mm.
that idea can be. And this really isn't helping. So it seems like it's going to be pretty bad for Bungie going forward.
It sounds like the sort of thing that everyone loves in theory, but then in
Mm.
practice, you possibly stop
Yeah.
playing as soon as
It's not going to be very fun.
your
Yeah.
like fun
Yeah,
hat. I presume
Yeah.
I assume you can spend a lot of marathon bucks on like a fun hat, and then like as soon
Yeah.
as someone steals that, you're like,
Well,
And now the hats are plagiarized. So great.
Yeah.
now the hats are also plagiarized. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of based on a game called Escape from Tarkov, which is quite popular, but like it's like a large but still fairly niche crowd, not the kind of size of crowd that Bungie or Sony would need.
How long have extraction shooters been really popular? Like, isn't there a risk if they don't release it quite soon that they're going to be releasing it way after the hype has died down?
Mm.
Exactly, yeah. Who knows? Who knows? They could put out a brand new battle royale any day.
Mm.
Yeah, so I think we should probably move on to the next story, which is going to be Ed.
Great.
Yeah, this one's slightly more positive.
Yeah. Well, some is.
Partly.
The tale of two parts, really.
Oh no.
Yeah. So last episode, we brought you the news of Giant Bomb and Polygon, both appearing to be on the verge of collapse about the same time. And so I'm going to bring you the updates for these stories. So I'm going to start with the Giant Bomb side of things, where things appear to have gone basically really, really well.
Incredibly well.
Yeah. So they were owned by a company called Fandom. And since we've last spoken about it, Fandom have sold Giant Bomb to the Staffers. So At PAX East on the 11th of May, the former staffers and now owners of Giant Bomb credited this move to fan backlash at what had appeared to be the collapse of Giant Bomb. The pressure from fans led to fandom approaching staffers Jeff Grubb and Jeff Baccalar with the suggestion that fandom sell Giant Bomb to them, which was happily accepted. As a result, the 5 staffers will now all be co-owners together. I should say some of the reporting I felt was a little unclear about whether it was just going to be Grubb and Baccalar who owned it all, or whether it was going to be all of the staffers. But if you actually watch the PAX East event,
Yeah.
if you actually watch the event, Grubb says, quote, "They sold to me and Baccalar, but we are going to share," end quote. And they go on to make it clear that all 5 will own it together. In their words, Giant Bomb is now fully independent and employee owned. So yeah, I mean, it feels like a really positive update from
That's
Giant
great.
Bomb.
That
I
is
can't really
great.
think of a way it could have gone much better. Of course, the only downside of not having corporate backers is they will be more reliant on subs than they ever have been before. So, maybe if you've got a couple of extra gaming bucks you want to throw their way, that could be a good thing for gaming journalism. I don't know. But good luck to them is all I can say.
Hmm.
It seems that like fandom who owned them, basically they got Giant Bomb in the first place because they were just part of this wider conglomeration that they bought, and they just never really knew what to do with it. And this whole thing came up when they were just like, started to pay a bit more attention and were like upset that they were like swearing on stream and stuff like that, like really basic stuff. And I think the fan backlash at what was happening just was like made them think, oh fuck it, don't need to do this anyway. We don't care about it, and so they just gave it over.
Now on to Polygon, which, I mean, the news here is not as good.
Yeah, this is less good.
Yeah, so Polygon were owned by Vox and have been bought by a company called Valnet, who are, not great.
Yeah, they're not
No,
great.
They're not great. And I think we talked about this on the last episode, but didn't the founder of Valnet make their money through some sort of shady means, Alex?
Yes, they set up Brazzers and Pornhub, and then had to divest of those funds when they turned out they were all doing some very bad things. The kind of things
Right.
you might imagine that a porn site might do, for instance.
Good money.
Yeah, so it's not a great reputation to start off with. So anyway, Valnet, the first thing they did was lay off about 25 of the around 35 staff members there. I know.
Oh my
So,
God.
This happened as well with less than a month to go on their current union contract. So the union here is the Vox Media Union, who are a part of the Writers Guild of America. Apparently, not only had Vox, quote, not taken new contract negotiations seriously up to this point, to quote the union press release, but they now laid off the entire bargaining team as part of what the union has described as a self-defeating decision to glut Polygon.
Wow. That's a good phrase. It's a good sentence. Well written. Anyway.
Well, they're writers. That's literally their job.
Yeah.
Well, not anymore.
Oh, Alex, too soon.
No.
Come on.
Too
Sorry.
soon,
Sorry.
Alex. Jesus.
I couldn't help
They're
myself. I'm sorry.
listening.
I'll report into re-education in the
Please
morning.
do.
Sorry,
Good thing.
Please do. Yeah, so the important thing to note here as well is that unlike many gaming websites, Polygon hadn't been so reliant on contractors up till now. They mainly utilized the salaried and unionized and therefore relatively well-paid members of staff. A representative from Valnet has said that their plan is to slowly build the team back up, but it's very easy to imagine that the goal might be to hire contractors who they could pay less and who would not be unionized. I had a little look into the amount that Polygon writers got paid compared to other gaming outlets, and to try and think about how much they might, like what the impact might be on them going forward. So Valnet own several other gaming outlets as well, and in an article for Aftermath last year, Luke Plunkett compared the rates paid by different gaming websites. So Polygon, pre-purchase, paid between $250 and $500 per article, while GameRant, a website owned by Valnet, paid just $19 per 1,000 words. And another website owned by Valnet, Hardcore Gamer, apparently pays $10 for new posts around 400 words, $20 for guides, $30 for longer guides, which is about 1,500 words, and $30 for reviews, previews, and interviews. So this would be a substantial pay cut if this is anything like what happens at Polygon compared to where they were before.
That's insane.
Valnet have refused to give a comment on this alleged pay, so who knows. But Plunkett in this article identified Valnet as a key example in an industry that is moving from full-time employees to poorly paid contracted labor, which he likens to sweatshop labor and says it's almost impossible, quote, to earn enough to live on. The Vox Media Union seems to agree because they've described Valnet as having a reputation for exploitative conditions and for devaluing rigorous journalism in favour of churning out content. But, my friends, the alleged issues with Valnet don't end here. And I'm going to be using the word allege quite a lot for the rest of this section.
Oh, wow. This is the good stuff.
Yeah. In March of this year, the Wrap released an investigation that they'd done into Valnet. They had spoken to 15 current and former contributors who alleged that, to quote the article directly, quote, Valnet routinely exploits and discards writers while prioritizing mass quantity over quality to churn out mind-numbing SEO bait. And the investigation directly quoted workers as saying that, quote, everyone is underpaid, overworked, and really pretty, extremely exploited. And another one said, quote, they are a company without clear objectives or morals who present themselves as a safe haven for young and experienced writers, but they end up paying bargain basement rates and forcing contractors to create junky clickbait. In fact, one of these workers, Danielle Quintilano, has filed a $40,000 lawsuit claiming oppressive working conditions and is seeking to establish a class action suit against Valnet. The suit highlights many alleged violations, including, quote, failing to pay minimum wage, overtime, provide meal or rest breaks, and reimbursing business expenses,
Wow.
end quote. Valnet's response to this, well, they've sent a legal letter to the Wrap demanding they take this investigation down, and they've also sent notices of defamation to 3 content creators and journalists who have covered this story.
Thanks for dropping us in it, Ed.
So, if any of Valnet's lawyers want to get in touch, please reach out to Alex. His email address is
No.
it's all alleged. It's all
Let's try and keep this podcast solvent, basically solvent.
let's. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this has all happened in Minecraft, in a video game. But yeah. So basically, given Valnet's track record, I think it looks very likely that the salaried workers at Polygon will be replaced with more precarious, poorly paid contractors, which I guess is quite fitting for the Citizen Sleeper episode that we've just done. When asked directly by a writer at The Verge about whether they would replace employees with contractors, all Valnet's head of mergers and acquisitions had to say was, we will do it right. The question is, right for who? Given what we appear to have seen from Valnet so far, the answer is unlikely to be right for the workers or right for the readers of Polygon.
I will say the Verge you just mentioned are also owned by Vox, so I think they might be a bit more concerned than most people on this matter.
In the meantime, the laid-off workers at Polygon have a GoFundMe, which I think we'll be linking in the show notes. This has already received over $50,000 of donations, so it's good to see that the wider community sort of has support for these workers.
That's nice. I wonder if they'll start their own kind of workers run thing, because a lot of like these sites that collapse end up doing that. You mentioned Aftermath. They're founded by a bunch of guys who were in, I think it was Kotaku, and they got laid off because the management there is also terrible. And there's a bunch of them. There's a kind of a new economy of these worker-run organizations, which, you know, are great, but also have like a fraction of the money that was previously available. So they are not enough to sustain an industry. So yeah, it's more bad news apart from that glimmer of hope at the end, I think.
I think the reality is with a lot of the kind of either Vox or Vox adjacent sort of companies as well, particularly in their like video stuff, which I would imagine is a big part of their revenue just because it's so much easier to kind of monetize and stuff that is video in comparison to kind of text articles. The reality is that a lot of the audience's connection is often to the on-screen sort of talent, I guess is the industry term, rather like as much as the sort of masthead itself, the kind of company itself, which I think is something that The Verge, that Vox itself, that Polygon, I think in the past have always struggled with a little bit, because, you know, if you're, what's his name? Brian David.
Yeah, he used to
Gilbert.
do video for Polygon.
Like,
it was really good.
You know, if he leaves, or if your equivalent of him leaves from like your company, like it's quite hard to replace them. I think I read an article saying that the reason Vox had sold Polygon because they think a recession might be coming and they just want to have loads of cash on hand. So they were just like, I guess that's what we're going to get rid of.
Yeah, the word is I've heard former staffers saying they all were very surprised this happened. From their understanding, Polygon was doing relatively well. I mean, no one's doing amazing, but they were like they were profitable and they were doing okay. And like I listened to another like worker owned group who escaped got fired from a larger corporation and then started their own thing. Remap Radio had their podcast. They had someone from formerly from Polygon on, and yeah, she was just like, I was telling people that like, well, at least I'll be okay for the near future. And yeah, so it seems like the axe came out of nowhere for them, which is awful. But yeah, that's some largely depressing news. Good news about Giant Bomb.
Great
But
news about Giant Bomb.
yeah, great news. But I've got
Yeah, sorry that I finished with the bad news.
Yeah, you should have gotten it the other way around.
I just wanted to end with the sort of like call to action, I guess, of the GoFundMe page, but yeah, it was more depressing this way round.
That's a good idea.
Well, I have some news. I have some news. I'm not going to say it's good news. It's probably objectively bad news, but it is kind of fun news. So I call this story the Gooners Dilemma.
Oh.
So we are going
I
to
love
talk.
it when that word comes up.
Yeah, you love it.
It's always
We're
going to be
gonna
a good time.
we're gonna have a bit of it. So we're going to talk about gacha games for a bit. So if you're unaware, and congratulations if you are, these are these games that they're free to play, but they make their money by essentially gambling mechanics. So probably the biggest one is, or the one I know about anyway, is the Genshin Impact. And that's a game where it's like an action adventure game. You've got a big, beautiful 3D world you can explore, but over the course of the game, you will generate some sort of currency, gems or something, and having that currency allows you to buy what people call pulls, because it's literally like a slot machine. And when you do a pull, you get a random character, and you can play as that character, and they've got good stats, hopefully, or whatever, and it's fun to play as them. And also, quite often, they are very pretty ladies who don't wear much. This is what is called the waifu economy, a waifu being anime, or let's, in this case, anime-style game lady who you've taken a liking to.
I feel like this is how my dad would explain this story.
Yeah.
Look, I'm just
The
trying to
lady
keep...
that you're
Look,
kind of
look,
fancy.
You heard the title. I'm trying to, because we're going to get pretty salubrious here. Don't worry about it, because we're not talking about Genshin Impact. We're going to talk about, well, actually, before we move on, I just want to say, talking about gacha games at all, it's incredibly exploitative, these games.
Oh, it's so exploitative.
It's basically gambling. Your chances of getting the rarest and therefore the best, and also relevantly, like sexiest characters is extremely low. And so people end up, and while you can make this currency in the game through gameplay, while it probably, when you first start playing, seems quite generous, quite quickly that generosity runs out, and you will almost certainly have to be spending real money to make these pulls to get the characters you want. Now,
It's kind
that
of like
sounds bad, and
sort of like horny FIFA.
Isn't all FIFA horny FIFA?
a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, like FIFA.
Yeah.
This
I
is-
mean,
this is
FIFA
like-
Ultimate Team
It's like-
Horny
yeah,
loot box.
is
yes.
basically a gacha game. I mean, some people are horny for
Yeah, I'm
FIFA
sure, like-
players.
bless
So,
No
and that's
judgment.
that is also gonna be relevant soon, because we are not talking about Genshin Impact. We are talking about a game called Orrery. It's a very weird name that's hard to pronounce. It comes out of Taiwan by a developer called Night Fun, and it started last year in August. And it is an H gacha game, a hentai gacha game. This means it is pornography. So you can probably imagine how porn could kind of slot into this format.
As it were.
You get your waifus, you do your pulls, and you get a waifu. But in this version of the game, I think after some, you give them gifts or something to romance them, and then you get a scene of hardcore pornography of you having sex with the wife. That's what happens in the game. And Orrery has a reputation. There are a number of these games, but has a reputation of having actually higher production values than most. So I guess if you're gonna do this, it may be one of the better choices, until probably what I'm about to tell you soon. I should say, right up, if you thought Genshin Impact was exploitative, this is even more exploitative. Some of these games, these H gacha games, they can be like $50 a pull. They go crazy. It's for the real dedicated guys who enjoy these games.
And buy $50 a pull, You
A pull on the slot machine.
okay?
To be clear.
Just
To
clarify.
be clear. To be clear. So,
You know-
sorry, Sophie?
No, I was gonna say, it's they always should have combined gooning and gambling. That's always the
This is it.
best combination we possibly could have found in
Yeah,
video games is
this
these
is
two
the
things together.
This is the
Nothing bad
purest
could
expression of
happen.
capitalism right here.
Got him.
So the actual game is, I mean, while it is quite high production value apparently for H games, it's nothing compared to like Genshin Impact. The actual game itself is, from my understanding, a fairly kind of basic strategy game, but that doesn't really matter to this story, or I imagine to most of the players. So this specific game, some things about it. One, while the vast majority of all the characters who you can gain through the pulling are women, are attractive, comely lasses. There are some men in there, apparently on the basis that the company kind of wants this to at least appear to be the kind of game you can play with your girlfriend. I think
That's
air quotes.
crazy.
So
Okay,
there are
right.
also some men in there.
Oh, they've gone woke.
Yeah. and similarly, if you get the men, you can also have the sex scenes with them, and they play exactly the same otherwise.
Progressive.
As I say, the vast majority of the characters are men, and of the rarest 5-star characters, like only 1 in 10 is a man. Now, the big difference between this game and other ones is that for some reason, frankly, it has PvP, i.e. you can play against other players. So I don't understand why you do this. I don't understand why you'd play a game like this
Like
and
you're
ever want to
competing
interact with other people playing this
against-
game ever.
Yeah, when,
in there.
Oh.
Yeah.
when you say like
And-
against, what do you?
Well,
what does the gameplay loop involve?
Believe me, we're getting into it.
Okay.
I will say,
Okay.
this is also that I guess the developers are really want to incentivize this because this is the best way to make in-game currency. It's like the most profitable way to play the game is to do PvP. And therefore, maybe you don't have to spend quite as much money on it. That's the idea, right? Now, the way the PvP actually works is, as I said, it's some sort of strategy game. I don't even have any real clue how it works. But each player has a team that they have assembled of the characters, and I guess the ones with better stats have better chances. I guess, or whatever. Now, when you win, you automatically steal a character from your opposing team and put them into a dungeon. Yeah,
In a dungeon?
In a dungeon, and then in the dungeon, you have sex with that character. So you are literally cuckolding
Oh my
your,
god, it's a cucking
your
simulator.
opponent.
Oh my
It's
god.
a cucking simulator. Yeah.
That's
That's an actual point of the game, right?
I
we
think
have gone
this-
too woke.
also the sort of the stealing and the dungeon make it sort of seem maybe worse than that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to say that.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and say they don't have
Yeah.
incredible
Yeah.
consent
Right.
hygiene in this game.
Oh my god.
So this is already pretty weird, but what the developers did not consider the wider ramifications of the gameplay systems, right? Because while ostensibly, you might want to play it with your girlfriend, realistically, the vast majority of players were straight men. Straight men who are very dedicated to their waifus. And remember, they have probably spent a lot of money to get their waifus and also more to train them up, level them up and shit. So they don't want to risk their waifus, right? You don't want to put your waifus at risk of having this happen to them. So what started to happen was that all the players would only play men on their
Battle
team.
men
They
against
PvP
each
with the
other.
lads. Yeah.
They
Yeah,
PvP
exactly.
with the lads.
So
It is
but-
FIFA. Yeah.
But what happened when they all did this was that if you won, you would only take a male character to your dungeon. And in the dungeon, it showed you the sex scene, which was unskippable. They are making you watch gay porn
Oh, that's
in order
incredible.
to appropriately gain the female characters to goon to, essentially. We've used the word, come on. We're all adults here. And so this is the Gooners Dilemma, right? Theoretically, if they just put some women on this team, on their teams, everyone could see some porn that they would like for the purposes they would like to see the team. But they are so possessive, none of them do. So as a result,
That's
these
insane.
guys just constantly see gay porn to play this game.
There's got to at least be
Now-
some people playing it that are like, oh no, not again.
Oh no, not
oh
the gay
dear.
porn.
Well, exactly.
This isn't awakening
Th-
anything
this
in me.
isn't this isn't over. This isn't over.
Oh my god, is this
Oh
the
my
twist?
god. Oh my god,
This
there's
isn't
more.
over.
There's
So
more.
what happened was this fact became known in the gacha community, I guess. And as a result, gay players from the West started to play this game for their own enjoyment, right? But for whatever reason, I mean, there may be cultural differences, whatever. I don't really want to get into it. But the Chinese market, which is the main market for it, it's a Taiwanese game. They mainly market to China. For whatever reason, there aren't many gay guys playing this game, or maybe they're just all closeted or whatever. As a result, what would happen is now, again, another bizarre decision, frankly, that they made when making this game is that not only can you do PvP, but like in other games, when you play against them, after you've had a match, it gives you the option to like friend request your opponent. And so what people started doing was the Chinese players, when they lost, they'd send a friend request and a DM to their opponent that's like mockingly saying, yeah, you won, but haha, now you're looking at gay porn. Now you're having sex with a man. But the Western gay players would reply with, yes, I'm having sex with a man. I quite like this, thank you. And this
Having a
caused
great
quite a lot of international friction within this team. As a result, the devs, some would call them cowards, basically issued an apology. They restricted friending and DMs between Western and Chinese players. And they put out a kind of bizarre statement that said that the issue arose because of the influence of other games that they're making. So this team are also making a game that is for women with husbandos, apparently, and they're also making a game for gay men, apparently. That is what they're doing.
So they're literally blaming it on woke culture is what they're literally
Sort of,
doing.
but, like,
They're like, our
woke-
game was too woke.
Woke culture internally in the studio because of the other games they are making. So they are basically bizarrely claiming that this gayness infected their game because of the gayness of other games they're making. That the developers just couldn't help but put gayness into their game. Is basically.
I feel like, was it the gayness they needed to apologize for, or
No.
maybe it was the
No.
non-consensual dungeon-based sex that they probably should have taken out?
Yeah,
I still,
that's right.
so I'm still, the fact that we don't know what the game itself is, I think for me is the, like, so what is, it's like me and my,
How's the battle
It's like a
happening?
it's,
me and my
it's a
big
strategy game of some
sexy
sort.
group
You
of
do, I don't
lads
know,
are gonna like,
like
play
Clash of
checkers? Like, what-
Clans or something like that. I think.
Okay.
I mean, it's not really relevant to the story. Yeah, so I don't really know.
But I need to know.
Could be Half-Life 3 for all we
I
know.
will say now, full attribution. I derived pretty much this entire story from an excellent YouTube channel called MLYP, much like your posting it stands for. They also did a bunch of videos on Mark Kearns, who's aka Grums, the ringleader of Gamergate 2, and did a very extensive and fantastic takedown of him. I recommend checking out their videos. But I will say, even that video was based on a Reddit thread on our subreddit Drama by Flares117. The name of the thread was Cuck Chronicles Part 3. I'd rather watch gay porn. I never found out what happened in Cuck Chronicles Parts 1 and 2. I'm sure they have a good time though. Yeah, the devs the devs ultimately toned down the gay scenes and made them skippable like cowards.
Wow.
Revenue apparently dropped in the West, and they deleted their Twitter account.
Did they just make the gay scene skippable, or
I think all the scenes are skippable. I mean,
Okay, I was
frankly,
going to say, that's
it seems a bit weird that you wouldn't make a cutscene skippable. I think maybe that's the ultimate moral we should take away from that. Always make your cutscenes skippable, lest something like this happen again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking the whole
What
way
if I'm
through.
trying to speed run this game? You know, what if I'm trying to speed run the waifus and the husbandos?
Take that to games done quick. I'm sure that'll be a fun topic this year. Tom,
Incredible.
you seem a bit shell shocked by this. Game.
There are worlds out there that.
Yeah.
Ah.
There's multitudes. There's multitudes.
All I can do is like fill in the gaps of what the game is, though. You know,
What's the game? What happens
I've got
in
to say-
the
it's
game?
like
I've got to
surely
say,
How does
no
the
one
fight
wants to
happen?
play. Like no one wants to
What's
play
a
the actual
match?
thing anyway. So
Yeah. What's the
I mean,
game?
I mean,
Tell me, what's the gameplay loop? What is it?
Maybe. I mean, look, from that video I watched, I saw like a map screen with like units and stuff on it. That's what I could really say. It's some sort of strategy game. That's all I know. Look, I told you the name of it. It's Aura 3s.
I don't wanna look
Apparently,
it up.
there is a censored version on the Apple App Store. But apparently, if you know where to look, you can find the uncensored version. So, if you want to fight,
For all
you're
of our listeners.
really that desperate. Seems like you're really trying to find reasons to play this game.
I just want to know what the
Search it out if you
know what
want.
the
Search it out
gameplay
if you
loop
want.
is like. We talk about the gameplay loop of every other game. I'm just like, what's going on? What is it?
it's like
This wasn't a
Civilization.
review. I'd never played this. I want to make this absolutely clear to all three of you and our audience. I have not played this game. Let's make that
Kind of
clear.
embarrassing for you, Alex, because the rest of us are all massive fans.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, we actually love
yeah,
it.
we were
Where's the
always-
journalistic
we're
integrity?
all playing it together.
Yeah.
It's like Civilization.
Tucking
It's
each
like,
other every all the time.
Civilization. Yeah, it's
You've-
like multiplayer civilization.
You've got the sex
Yeah.
victory.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
horrendous.
So
Nothing good can come of this.
on that excellent instinct, Sophie, we should probably wrap up the podcast. Nothing good can come of it. Okay. Let's move on. Let's bring back put everyone in the correct headspace. The gooning's over. No more gooning. Thank you very much for listening to this podcast. If for some reason you have, we would love it. Continue to love it. Beg you. Call you cowards if you don't. I love it if you spread us about on social media, reviewed us on iTunes and Spotify. You know what? I'm not going to tell you what ranking you should give us on there, but maybe take the inspiration of the best type of waifus we were just talking about for a clue to the star rating you should be giving our podcast. Maybe it's in
At
there.
least a 3.
Yeah. And don't take it like if you're a man, you should rank yourself as a 4 because those are the only ones in the groups. Let's go all the way to full waifu. You can find us on the bloated remains of Twitter, aka X, at Red Barrels Pod. We're on Blue Sky as well. If you look, Blue Sky might be inherently, undeniably morally better, but it is full of tedious libs. If you want to avoid a tedious lib, follow us on there at redbarrelspodcast.bsky.social. You can find me personally at Alex Dean. That's ALEXDUIN. That's on Twitter and at alexdean.bsky.social on Blue Sky. Sophie, what about you? Where can people find you?
Yeah, I stream on Twitch 4 days a week, twitch.tv/SoFreely.
Ed, what about you?
Yeah, I am not a lemon on Blue Sky, and I am at still not a lemon on X. Tom, have you got any internet presence of any kind?
And Tom, the idea that not every single person listening to this podcast doesn't already subscribe to every single possible outlet you put things out on is almost ludicrous. But if you wanted to plug anything, you could do it right
You
now.
can go to YouTube and search Tom Nicholas, TOMNICHOLAS, and you will find some videos that I've made, and hopefully some of them are good.
And you can also watch Boomers on not Netflix, on
You
Nebula.
can. You can watch my debut feature-length documentary, Boomers, is available to watch now on Nebula. You can find information about that at go.nebula.tv.
You can do that. And in fact,
Watch
if you
us
don't
Boomers.
do that, I mean, you failed all of us personally. Yeah, well, we may as well. Well, I should just say quickly, music from Brilliant Drink. The music you heard, Brilliant Drink did it, and it's great.
Brilliant, some might say.
Yeah. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you've had a nice time.
Been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I'm trying to look at the Discord window and see how authentic he's being. Is he being polite to me? Has he had a horrible time? Has he just been putting up with us the entire time? I I think it's at least
Really tolerant.
it's at least 30% true that he enjoyed it. So
30% or
that's
plus
pretty good.
3, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you get your stats up. That's plus 4, plus 5 if you put all the stats into it. So that's not too bad. Well, I certainly have enjoyed being basking in the presence of YouTube royalty. One of our, let's admit it, genetic betters is leaving us now. But
What? Okay.
yeah, I mean, let's just be honest about it. Let's be honest about it.
Normal.
Look, look.
Chill.
I am very look. I am a eugenicist in one way, and that's for Tom Nicholas.
Nope,
No,
nope,
cut that,
nope,
cut that.
nope.
Yeah, well, clearly we're going to disagree about this, so we should probably finish up. So for now, I will say goodbye, and my comrades will say
Bye. Tom, you can join us as well. We all say bye at the same time.
I
Okay.
edited
Just say
it
bye
together
at the
later,
same
don't worry
time.
about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.